I want to welcome everyone to our featured panel, When Black Students Excel, High-Performing Urban Schools. You know, in many school districts across the country, Black students are the least likely to experience educational success. Some might assume that this says something about the capacity of Black students. However, at InCust, we know better. It's been our pleasure to identify, award, and study schools where Black students achieve many indicators of educational success. In fact, we found dozens of schools where Black students have remarkably high attendance rates, very low suspension rates, and high levels of academic success on state assessments, college admissions tests, and performance in rigorous academic courses. In each of the schools represented on this panel, Black students outperform state averages on state assessments. We mean that Black students in these schools outperform Black students throughout their state, but we also mean that the Black students in these schools outperform the averages for all students in their state. If all schools in the United States were like the schools represented on this panel today, there would be no Black-white achievement gap in this country. These schools are proof that the achievement gaps, opportunity gaps, or whatever gaps that we might have, that they're indictments of our systems. They're not indictments of the students we have the privilege to serve. It's now my pleasure to turn to my colleague, Dr. Stanley Monroe, who will introduce these impressive educational leaders. Dr. Monroe has been an executive coach with InCust and has recently started as an administrator in the Fresno Unified School District in California. Dr. Monroe and I look forward to working with each of the schools represented on this panel as we write InCust's next book to be entitled When Black Students Excel.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I am pleased to introduce these outstanding school leaders in alphabetical order. First, we have Dr. Kevin Grohr, the principal of Maplewood, Richmond Heights High School in Maplewood, Richmond Heights School District in St. Louis, Missouri. Dr. Grohr turned around Maplewood, Richmond Heights High School in a manner that earned the school national recognition. For example, the school was featured by Edutopia, and in 2015, they earned the America's Best Urban Schools Award. The school continues to achieve at high levels for every demographic group served. Welcome, Dr. Grohr.
Good morning.
Good morning. Next, please welcome Mr. Demetris Pantadilis, principal of Patrick Henry Preparatory School in East Harlem, New York. Mr. Pantadilis has been an award-winning principal for the past 18 years at Patrick Henry, also known Public School 171 in New York City's District 4. He has transformed his school into one of the most prestigious elementary middle schools in New York City, as evidenced by top scores on quality reviews, New York City accountability reports, and New York State report cards, and InCust 2018 America's Best Urban School Award. Welcome, Principal Pantadilis.
Good morning. Thank you for this honor.
Thank you. Also, welcome Brian Rainey, principal of Pharaoh Charter High School in San Diego, California. With Mr. Rainey's leadership, O'Farrell High became an avid national demonstration school and a 2015 America's Best Urban Schools Award winner. Pharaoh High is one of 4 high schools featured in NCUS's publication entitled 5 Practices for Improving the Success of Latino Students, a guide for secondary school leaders. Welcome, Principal Rainey.
Good morning.
Good morning. Next, please welcome Ms. Alexa Sorden, the founding principal of Concourse Village Elementary School in the Bronx, New York. Principal Sorden has led her school to multiple impressive distinctions, including a National Blue Ribbon Schools Award and the 2020 America's Best Urban School Award. Welcome, Principal Sorden.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We had a 5th panelist who was not able to join us because of illness. Nonetheless, we want to recognize Ms. Suzanne Berry, principal of Winbrook Elementary in Palm Beach County, Florida. Winbrook won the America's Best Urban School Award in 2017, and their students continue to achieve amazing results. We wish you a speedy recovery, Ms. Berry.
Thanks to all of our panelists for being with us this morning. We appreciate your dedication and your time. So we're going to jump into questions for you in just a moment. We also want to invite our audience to place questions in the question and answer box. We will endeavor to pose as many questions as possible during this session. Panelists in general, when we ask a question, please feel free to chime in. We look forward to learning from all of you. So let's begin.
Okay.
Munro.
Yes. The NCUS team that have visited your schools have talked incessantly about the culture of your school. Culture matters. What is one of the most important things you regularly do to help ensure that students feel valued and appreciated? Is there anything you do that is particularly important in helping Black students feel valued and appreciated?
So first of all, welcome everyone. Demetrius Pantelides. I would first of all start off putting in the time, being present, from greeting our students when they're coming into our school building, to just being available for them, visiting classrooms, being available at dismissal. It's very, very important that presence is the first thing that they are able to feel and see throughout the day in terms of building a trusting environment and a culture that's very, very rich. The other part is the belief in the 3 R's. And what do I mean by the 3 R's? Developing relationships, relevance, and rigor. And we'll talk more about that. And as a prelude, I do have a presentation after this panel, so you can definitely see that in a more detailed analysis there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other panelists.
I would like to echo what Demetrius shared and add on. It's just the everyday things in life when you look a child in the eye, when you have a conversation and say, how are you? As a principal, I'm out at recess and I'm jumping rope, not as fast as I used to be, but you know, you're talking about Among Us or Roblox or the things that interest them, and you get to see the whole child. And that's when children start to feel really safe and know that you're here for all of me. And one of the things that we do as a school community, in addition to welcoming them as they're entering the building, every teacher's waiting for their scholar at their door, and they greet them by name, and they have a special pre-COVID handshakes. Now, because of COVID, we do non-touch greetings. So whether it's a foot shake or we say namaste or air hug, but just that 1 second that it takes to just say, hi, Joe, so nice to see you here today. You know, I'm glad you made it. It means a lot.
Absolutely. What about at the high school level?
I think at high school, you know, a lot of times students only feel valued if they're academically successful. And as well as our students do at O'Farrell, not everyone is academically, you know, doing awesome. I think students feel valued because at our school, there's this idea that every student needs someone to know them at every school, that there's a need to be an adult who really knows every kid at the school. And I think that's much easier to do at an elementary level, and it starts disappearing as the kids get older. And you get to high school, and this is one of the reasons kids fall through the cracks. They have a terrible year at home, and all of a sudden their academics dive, and the only person to notice is maybe their counselor at the end of the year. So at O'Farrell, every student has a home-based teacher that takes care of them for 4 years. And so that student or that adult knows that child. And I think there's a lot of value that comes from knowing that somebody cares about me at school. But the home-based teacher is more than just someone that knows them, that knows their name and maybe checks in on them once a week. It's every single day. They start their day with that home-based teacher. And that home-based teacher is more than just an advisory teacher. They're responsible for them. And so there's someone who's now looking out for them academically, social, emotionally. When they show up to school and they're upset and something's wrong, that person notices. And that person says, hey, what's up? And they're the one person that child will probably confide in. I got kicked out of the house last night. I had to sleep at blah, blah, blah. And oh my gosh. And so they know the resources they can go to send them to the counselors, or, okay, I'm going to make a call, do this. I'm going to call your teacher next period. Having someone that not just knows every child, but is responsible for their well-being, I think is a big part of why students feel valued at Pharaoh.
As a quick follow-up, you mentioned those home-based teachers. Can you just briefly talk to the teacher retention rate at O'Farrell?
Yeah, so we actually, for a long time, we didn't have any turnover. So when we built the high school for the first, I think, 6 or 7 years, and that was awesome. Since then, we've had folks who commuted a long way and have moved on. And but we actually, in the last, I guess it's been 13 years, I've only had one teacher leave for another job within the San Diego area. The rest have, had to move back east or something and have babies. So we've had a really good retention rate. And I've had teachers who actually, I didn't know, had moved an hour and a half away, but continued to commute because they had a home base and they want to see them through graduation. I was blown away. In fact, one had just gotten married and was living apart from her husband so she could see her home base graduate before she moved to a school up north. So it's been pretty amazing.
Thank you for that, because that does speak to the impact of a home base, but more so the family culture that you've created there. So thank you.
Let's build on this discussion of culture to note that unlike thousands of schools across this country, in your schools, relatively few Black students get suspended or expelled. In fact, at your schools, we notice very few student discipline behavior problems. What happens at your school to minimize those problems? And in particular, why do you believe that Black students at your school choose to behave so well? When a behavior problem or issue arises, how do you respond? Let's start with Dr. Grauer.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Johnson. I think the first thing is that we always start when we're undefeated. That means we start before the school year starts officially. And then we get in their homes and we ask them, what does a good year look like for you? We get to know them. I mean, I'm in the neighborhood, I ride my bike and they all know me. It's a tight, urban neighborhood, 3 square miles. And so that's another thing, is like they're used to seeing me around, at the grocery store, at the train stops or whatever. So that's a piece that normalizes this relationship. That's a principle there, but it's also, that's the guy who's always playing hoops with us. So that piece means a lot. But yeah, I mean, the second thing is we expect them to be really good. I know that sounds simple, but we don't expect them to come in here and be all crazy and be disrespectful. I mean, that's an expectation we put. I mean, we tell them we love you every day. And because we say that's a loaded statement, it means we expect more from you. And you got to come here and you got to behave and you got to perform. And we got to do the same thing as adults. I mean, we didn't create the school to give adults random jobs. And we didn't create the school to give you a rec center to hang out in. This is a place of work, and we're going to help you and love you. And we're going to have fun too, but we're going to take our work seriously and ourselves lightly, and we're going to get after it every day. So that's the energy we bring. And we do talk a lot about energy, the energy the adults bring. You can either be one type of person or two types of person. You can be an energy giver and energy taker. And above every door in our school, it says, I'm responsible for the energy I bring into this space. That doesn't mean we have great days every day or we're not having a bad mood, but because we have that expectation, we'll say in front, you know what, right now, I'm feeling like this. So just so you all know, but work with me, I need your help today. You know, when teachers say that to students, there's great buy-in. You know, so again, in retrospect, our whole thing is that when a student does misbehave, because they still do, we don't get all worked up and bent out of shape about it. You know, we keep things rolling and we reflect, we repair it, and we restore the relationship. That's what it's about. And we move on. We don't stay stuck in it. And so remember that time you did that a month ago? No, that's not what it's about. You know, we need to be able to teach and restore the relationship. And there's a process for that that we call Blue Devil Etiquette that we use to make that happen. And the kids know that they're not going to outlast us with this. They're going to have to go through that. But we know in the long run, it makes our place a more trustworthy, stronger relationships, and the kids feel known, valued, and inspired.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Others of you want to this issue?
Concourse Village, we have a strong belief in positive behavior reinforcement. So we're constantly focusing on the positive, and we acknowledge a lot of the positive behaviors. But everything that Kevin said, I felt like I was just watching myself. Expect to be amazing. And you see this smile, right? That's what I expect. So we're all amazing here. So I think the idea of expectations carries a lot of weight. And someone may think, well, how do I mean, it's not simple. You really have to believe it. And your behavior has to match your words. So when the educators are expecting something from children, then they should also be as exceptional as the children. So what we're expecting from them, we should also provide.
Great.
Thank you.
So just a couple of points. I just want to, one of the things that as we see as a pattern is it's all about relationships that we build with our staff, our parents, and our students. And that is, I think that's the most integral piece. I also want to talk about, you know, what Goldie Mohammed's book, and I can, you know, thank our current District 4 superintendent in bringing Goldie Mohammed into our work about cultivating genius. And even the title of a book, every one of our students should be seen is a genius. They have amazing things to offer. You just have to tap into it. You have to know about each child. And I think that's the most important thing, you know, focusing on the joy, Black joy, focusing on criticality, intellectualism, skills, and identity that she speaks in her book. And these are just some of the things that we try to do and engage our students, because it's very, very important that we can track students that are misbehaving. And in one way, shape, or form, it has to go with engagement, the interest level. If we engage them from an instructional core aspect, we can really be a difference maker. And when I talked about those 3 R's, we try to make sure that relevance, that students they know what they're learning, why they learned it, and how they will use it. Those three key questions are important in the lives of my children. And that gives them a purpose for everything that they do. And it invokes in them to say, you know what, this is important.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are some real excellent responses, and I appreciate that. And another comment that we've heard frequently from NCUS teams who have visited your schools relates to rigor. Teams tell us that your students are expected to learn rigorous academic standards, no less rigorous than those taught in more affluent suburban schools. And your teachers are expected to teach those students in ways that result in all students, including African-American students, developing a real depth of understanding. What happens at your school to help ensure that teachers support each other in creating powerful lessons that are likely to resonate with students and increase their understanding. So what, if anything, is done to help ensure that lessons will resonate with Black students and help them develop a depth of knowledge?
Brian, you want to take this one?
Kevin, I just remember talking to you now. Everything's coming back to me. I really enjoyed that conversation, by the way. So the students in my part of San Diego, Southeast San Diego, traditionally have not done well. The schools here, especially the high schools, have been the lowest performing schools in San Diego pretty much forever. And then, we come along and we do something a little different, and the kids become the top performing kids in San Diego. And people ask me about that. And I always say, there's nothing wrong with the kids in Southeast San Diego. There's never been anything wrong with the kids in this community. It's been the adults in the system. I think, unfortunately, what a lot of people do out of empathy and out of sympathy for kids is that when they're in difficult situations, when they have difficult home lives, they lower the academic bar. And I grew up 3 miles from here, and I experienced that growing up. You are not doing anyone any favors by lowering the bar. In fact, it is hurtful and harmful for students to expect less from them academically and to lower the bar. Instead, you keep that bar up there at the same place you would for your own children, and you help support them get there. You help fill in the gaps they need. You get somebody who knows and loves them, because at home there might not be someone who's watching them very much. There might not be, they may be moving from home to home, but there's somebody here taking care of you. Okay, I fill in that gap. There might be another gap. When our students take the SAT, most of our students can't afford SAT prep. Well, then I'll get you SAT prep. Well, to do good on the SAT, I take the PSAT. Well, then we'll stop school and everyone will take the PSAT. So it's doing the things that need to be done for the children to be successful. The way, if you were an affluent parent and educated, you would do all of these things for your children. Well, then we do all these things for our children here at O'Farrell. I don't know. I mean, there's not a magic recipe to it, but I don't know, something like that.
Great answer. I'm going to ask the other panelists to chime in if you'd like, and then we're going to try to handle a few of the questions that are coming in from the audience. We're getting lots of questions, so please continue with this question about rigor.
Well, if you guys don't mind, I'll jump in. I'll be brief, but what Brian so eloquently stated, I back 100%. I've noticed that too, is when we expect less from our students behaviorally, academically, or socially, they tend to also think we don't care about them when we do that, which leads to other issues. And so that's not something, a lot of times white teachers do that with students who don't look like them. And we make the mistake of thinking, well, this person cannot do that. And we got to get in front of that. We can't allow that. So I also want to add a couple of techniques that we try. I mean, we believe in showing people what good work looks like before they even do it. And so the concept of model work comes from Ron Berger's work, The Ethic of Excellence. And it's in any course we offer, we require, a defining assignment, so to speak, where you're going to do this. It's going to look like this, whether it's a paper on Alexander the Great, whether it's a children's book they're writing in Spanish class, or in the band class performance. This is what last year's class did. This is what class 5 years, we archive good work. And we say, it's all over the school. This is what you're capable of doing. Here's a checklist to help you do it. The rubrics aren't enough. We've learned. You can give a rubric and say, but that, rubric really isn't meaning that much to a student. But when you show them and you give them a process of refurbish and redoing it, the products in the end are so much better. And when we started doing that school-wide, we realized all of our students, and our African-American students especially, when we showed them and said, here's what a good job looks like, the clarity and the image in the head created that performance later on. And we try to do that with staff too, because as adults, I want to know, am I doing a good job? How do you know as principal you're doing a good job? There's so many marks and measures. And so I thought and clarity eases stress, and that helps performance. So that's one of the techniques we use at our school.
Fantastic.
One of the things that I really strongly believe in, high expectations, I have to mimic that. It's a non-negotiable. The other part about it has to be your core, your instructional core. None Lasaux in advanced literacy talks about that is your bread and butter. Anything that you do, we all know as educators, it's about the curriculum that we put forth for our kids. I want to give you 6 things that we have grown as a school and what we've done, because we started from a foundation and how we have grown. And looking at the norm and what is outstanding practices. So the norm is thinking about when you're learning, what is a skill? The outstanding practice is what is the strategy to access the skill? So it's about the mindset and how you're going to approach things. Skill-based teaching is the norm. The advanced practice is strategy-based teaching that's focused more on the process and the delivery. The third one, focusing on your tier 2 or your tier 3 groups to say, oh, they didn't get it. The outstanding practice is focusing on your tier 1 instruction, right? Your whole group. Because if it's all well put together, you're going to minimize your level, your tier 2 and tier 3. And then the other part is focusing on isolated skill scaffolds. Why don't we focus on the process, the explicit modeling, the visual instructional plans, and the content scaffolds? And the last one, average practice or the norm, recall, or product-based formative assessment. What we try to strive for is more increased focus on the process and demonstrated performance-based work. Those are the standing liars with high expectations incorporated in the core that's going to give our Black kids that fighting edge to be successful.
Thanks to all of you. I'm going to jump to some of the questions that are coming in from the audience. This first one's for Principal Rainey. So, you've got lots of students and not enough counselors. How do you get teachers to buy into the home-based program?
That is a great question. The reality of it is, at first, when you hire people, we try to really try to lay out for them, hey, O'Farrell's different. Here are the aspects, but more than anything, home base. We tell them all about it. I always have a teacher with me who will explain what home base is like personally for them. And every candidate will always say, oh, absolutely. It sounds great. They don't know what they're doing. They they get hired, and then all of a sudden they have these 30 kids in front of them that they're supposed to take care of. I think what they see is they see other teachers doing it, so they'll model ahead of them. I think too, we value these relationships. I mean, everybody talked about it, but if you don't create a system that makes space for them, then it's just words. So for us, home base is the main thing, but we also do other things. In the beginning of the school year, we shut down the school and we have an air band competition. Like, all the home bases compete against each other for air band, and the freshmen are terrified. They're terrified. And usually their teacher, who sometimes is a brand new teacher, is terrified. And we say, it'll be fine. Just go have fun. And it's a big deal at our school to compete and make it to the finals and win and all that. But that experience of working together, being awkward together, all of a sudden, often kids in their senior exhibition will say it all started in home base air band. We shut down the school and we do a turkey trot together, and they dress up like all kinds of Thanksgiving stuff and run around the school. We shut down the school and we have a dodgeball tournament. I don't know if dodgeball is legal where you are, but we let kids throw balls at each other and their teachers, and it's awesome. So we do the things, I think, that help bring the home bases together. There's the parent teacher conference that we do that is a big deal for us too. But I think it's creating the space for it, supporting the home base teachers with folks who can come alongside them and help, and then their colleagues seeing what each other's doing. I think that's part of it.
Great answer. Thank you so much. So one of the questions here has to do with the pandemic. It's hard to ignore. This audience member is asking, can you speak to how the pandemic has impacted the culture and the overall performance of each of your schools? Anybody?
So I know that Alexa's team addressed this question during her presentation on Tuesday. So I just want to mimic that. Obviously, you're keeping those systems and structures in place with few revisions. You have to set up your data systems, right? That's without a doubt. I'm looking at the data right now in terms of how we're doing it, any formative data that we have for our students. We need to have a pulse. You know, the reality of it, there's a form of accountability. The other part of it is, what are the needs of our kids now that they're in a pandemic? More of that social emotional piece. You're going to see that we have developed morning meetings, more of a push on morning meetings, which follows a responsive classroom approach. So we had to go into really deep digging in there. We're also doing the Mark Brackett's work around our mood meter, that we had to take it up a level in terms of making those personal connections. I think the other thing is just getting acclimated our staff with technology, the platforms, the formative assessments that, or the platforms that our teachers need to utilize so they feel comfortable. If you look at the research out there for the last 20 years, it's not all about always getting technology, but providing, leveling the field where the staff or the teachers know how to be involved with it. And how do you provide the training to the students and the families? Because if you're talking about little ones, I particularly have 11 different grades. There are 11 different needs. You have to think about screen time. You have to think about instructional schedules. You have to think about priority standards. So there's so many, in just answering that question, there's a lot of thinking that involved. Not only in New York City, we have a hybrid model where students, parents that feel comfortable do come into our school 5 days a week. For those that are not, we have a full remote schedule. And there are some classes that they have a blended model where there's one day that they come in school, the other day they are asynchronous, or they're doing synchronous work as a blended remote model. So there's so many models, but I think going back to what I'm saying is we need to keep those relationships open. We have to keep a line of communication open. I think that's the most important thing. You're going to see that, we got stronger in terms of Instagram, Twitters, emails. So this way, parents, information is all about giving them the power. Because a lot of my pre-K, my 3K, pre-K, kindergarten, we need our parents to sit next to our children. So we're educating them. So we have to think in professional development, the different modalities that it pushes. So, and then focusing on the schedule. So you are, really looking at what's the standards that you need to address to give our kids a fighting chance to be successful and to advance in that measure. So there's so much that went into the thought process, but that paradigm shift has been really powerful, that there's a lot of key pieces that we're going to be implementing when we do come back in person, which will be in the near future.
Great, thank you. I'm going to just move on to another question. We have an audience member who's asking about the demographics of your teaching staffs. This person is saying that they're trying to diversify, but they still have a largely white female staff. And they're asking, what advice do you have for us? And I know that all of you have very different situations. So I'm going to encourage several of you to respond. So please.
So our student demographics is 66% Latino, 33% Black. Our teaching population, our staff is about 92% Black and brown educators, mostly females. It's elementary, tends to be something that happens in elementary, but our staff represents the student population.
Now I know some of you have some very different situations, so please.
Yeah, my staff is mostly white, 50% male, 50% female. We have a few teachers who are Hispanic, and I have one teacher that's African American. And to be honest, that is a thing that often white teachers feel bad about. They feel bad about being white. There's nothing wrong with being whatever color you are. It has nothing to do with what kind of teacher you are. And so but it is a thing you have to deal with.
Yeah, my school is similar to Brian's. It's overwhelmingly white staff. And that's been a challenge for us and part of it is our teachers don't leave. So the retention's great, but meaning that we don't have opportunities oftentimes to hire new people because everybody's staying because they like working here. And so it's educating, it's bringing in people who can educate us on how to work better with all of our kids and being open to that and making it just the normal process of our growth.
Yeah, my school is similar in terms of having about 65% Hispanic and the rest 35 Black. My staff is about 50% white and 50% either African American, Black, or Hispanic. And that's always an area that we want to diversify. That's always a need. We're not perfect and we'll never proclaim to be. Do we truly believe that we want to represent the identities of our students? Of course, we want to make sure that they feel comfortable and they see our teachers as role models, and they continue to do that. But I also believe that, our white teachers are also doing a wonderful job as well, and we're doing a lot of equity teaching or equity learning and biases that we all have. There's not one person on this entire team that does not have biases. We all know that, but we're educating ourselves. And I think that's the beauty of it. Whether it's the Zarita Hammond's work or we're looking at the Goldie Mohammed, we're making ourselves aware of everything that's out there. So this way we can better inform our kids and do that. And I think it's an the last research, and if I could do an analogy, if we're looking at even children's book, what do they say? 70% of the children's book are either written or have characters of white or have animals represented of that. And that's something that we're trying to also change. So it goes beyond the teaching core group, but also looking at the books and the resources that we provide our kids. So this way they could identify with their culture, their race, and their ethnicity.
Can I say one thing, Dr. Johnson?
Please.
And that's just that it's an interesting question. I get it all the time. But I have never once had a parent ask a question about it. I've never once had a parent be concerned about it. I've never had a child be concerned about it. It is only other educators who ask the question, or outside people that ask the question and are assumed to be concerned. It's an interesting phenomenon. I've never had any parent ever be worried about that.
Well, what I would say is that in our visits to your schools, and actually in our visits to every finalist for our award, we always spend a lot of time interviewing students. We always spend a lot of time interviewing parents. And what students and parents tell us from your schools, what Black students tell us from your schools, is that the teachers here care about me. What parents tell us is the educators here care about my child. They care about my child's success. They care about my child's future. They believe in us. What we know as a profession when we look at the education of Black children across the nation is that so many Black students don't experience that. And so educators think that maybe the solution is changing the demographics of the teaching population. But we also have evidence to suggest that that alone is not the solution. The real bottom line is building those relations, strengthening the rigor, as some of you have shared, and creating instruction that kids can relate to. And you know, it's probably harder to do all of that when you have a staff that doesn't look like the kids. But what some of you are proving is that it can still be done. And that's the real bottom line. So let's use that as a segue to your next question, Dr. Monroe.
Okay, thank you. Have there been times when personnel at your school made statements or took actions that indicated that they did not believe that Black students could achieve the goals you were pursuing? If so, how did you respond? What did you say? What did you do?
Yeah, I've had
Anyone
that
can
happen.
answer.
I've
Okay.
had that happen, Dr. Monroe. I recall a teacher in a course saying that, I'm using her words, that her course became a dumping ground for certain types of students. And what that meant is what I asked, what does that mean? I'm not sure what you mean by that. And when I walked up to the classroom and saw who was in the room and what they looked like, I realized what she meant. And so that led to another discussion and some, actually to the whole staff about, all of our kids are our parents' best. They're not hiding two of their kids in the closet and saying, well, we're going to save these for later. This is their family and their beloved child. So we're not going to use those terms for anybody. And our job is to take any student from where they are and improve their skills and make them better human beings. And if you can't do that, then maybe this isn't for you. And that happens sometimes, where you have to decide, because teaching's more than just teaching, as you all know. You have to be an excellent classroom teacher, and you have to be a great designer of curriculum and lesson planning, right? You also have to be strong with relationships with all types of people and personalities. You have to do all three of those things consistently to be a successful educator. And if you don't want to have, if you're not interested in improving in those three areas, then this isn't the place for you. I've had colleagues call me and say, oh, we have an opening in this content area. I have a friend that wants to apply. And I told him, I said, do they want to do these three things and do them really well? Tell them not to apply. And they're like, yeah, okay. So that's kind of where it starts and where it goes with us.
Thank you. Anyone else? Feel free, please.
I would just say there's no teacher that is going to work with inner city youth that's going to say they don't believe African American students, Black students can do well. But the reality is exactly what Kevin said. I had a teacher last year that I hired, and he used the term "those kids." Don't ever use that term around me. And he just meant difficult kids. He had difficult kids. Why? We're trying to work on a class, but that is such a red flag to me. There is no those kids. They're all our kids, and they're just kids. They're human beings like every other human being. You don't have good ones and bad ones. They're just kids. They're making choices, good ones, bad. That's some of the way you did when you were a kid. That's all that is. And so when someone has a mentality that there are some good kids and there are some that are just bad, therefore all my problems in my classroom are not because of me. There's nothing I can do. It's those kids. So that person doesn't work here anymore.
So here's a question that kind of connects with what you're just saying. So this audience member asked, first stated, students are often just one caring adult away from succeeding. So how do you ensure your best teachers are working with students who need it the most?
So Dr. Johnson, one of the things that we try to do at Patrick Henry Prep is ensuring that we go through that interviewing process to get our very best teachers. And we believe in an apprenticeship. So a lot of our teachers are those teachers that we've had as student teachers in our school. Because one demo, one interview, or a series of demos will not tell you the true nature of an individual, what they believe in. I affiliate myself with numerous universities, so this way I have a plethora of student teachers anywhere, and fieldwork teachers, anywhere from a huge number of them coming in every single semester. So this way I can get their best and their brightest. Because one of the things that we have to also take a look at is, several years ago, one of the research studies showed that educators had one of the lowest GPAs, those that went into the educational arena. And we want to change that shift as well. So there's a lot of factors there. But going back, I think it has to do with just recruiting, retaining, and providing them, and not allowing that mindset to kick in. And what do I mean by that? I have meetings with my first, second, third, fourth year teachers until they retain tenures once a week. They know they sit down with me. We have a one-on-one conversation every single week. And we can talk about lesson plans. We can talk about my observations. We could talk about bringing in their lesson plans, their portfolios, their assessment pieces, and talking about students, right? Talking about their lives, talking about what they're going through. So it's important that it's not a hit or miss. So the discussion, the conversation is constantly reinforced around our core values in making sure that all the expectations of our students are being met. So I truly believe having those relationships, having those conversations, we get to a point where we have a teacher profile, where we know the strength, the challenges, the action plan, and benchmark for each one of our teachers, because we invest in them, because they are a crucial piece of this equation. And we're not going to be working with average. We want above average educators. That's what our kids deserve. And it's our job, as Kevin indicated, after we provided all the supports, if it gets to a time where it's just not good enough, we have to have those real conversations about that. But as educators have said, it's as if you're entering that classroom and your kids are in that classroom, and you are accountable to make sure you have the best educator there.
Thank you. Principal Sorden?
Our scholars are part of the interview process. So in addition to having a very lengthy process where they have to do a series of demos and interview with many teachers and spend the day with educators, every demo that teacher conducts, the scholars know they are potentially hiring this individual as their future teacher. So they know, do they want this? Does this teacher seem like someone they could connect with? Do you think she cares about you? Do you think she was prepared? And then they also sit in the interview process and they ask their own questions. And if the children don't give the green light, then they can't move on to the next step.
Thank you.
I have a question. How do your teachers hold their fellow colleagues accountable with the question that was posed, that they have that belief, that efficacy to create that agency that Black students can achieve? How do you see your fellow colleagues, your teachers at your school, holding their fellow teachers accountable?
I think once you create an environment where everyone cares deeply about these kids, especially in our situation on home-based teacher, if they find out another teacher is slacking, another teacher is not giving what they should be, not doing the thing, they will either confront them themselves or rat them out. They will come to me and they will say, I'm concerned, and I will go investigate. I think you create a community where you understand that by lowering standards, by not doing anything you're supposed to do, you are harming children. And the teachers will not allow anyone to harm children. And so I think creating that environment is part of what gets them to do that.
I think that's great, Brian. You know what? We work too hard to have somebody letting us down. I mean, we're very interdependent in this job. You know, what happens in room 302 next door in 301, that's going to impact it. When you leave 302 and it's a tight lesson plan, it's organized, the teacher has their act together and the students feel like they're part of a community, and the next door they don't, that's a problem for all of us. And as principals, we feel that all the time and we deal with it. So, and it just kind of ticks me off even thinking about it. But that's something that, you know, we can't allow, and that's our job as the building leaders. So yeah, I mean, I would echo that sentiment that, you know, our teachers, we're here by the Mississippi and Missouri River. And if you ever look at those rivers, the current is just amazingly strong. We like to claim our cultures like that current. When you come in the river and jump in, you can't swim against it. It's going to take you. And you hope that your school culture is like that. And, you know, I had a teacher of the year we hired from a different part of the state, and he came up here, strong teacher. And I remember him coming into my office the first week. He was like, why didn't you tell me? Everybody here is a better teacher than me. I thought I knew what I was doing. And I said, well, you're really good too, but you got a choice. Here's them, here's you. This gap in between is called creative tension. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to leverage that to become a better educator? But I hope we hire the right people that will rise and will help you do it. But again, that tension that Brian stated is a positive peer pressure that we want to cultivate and leverage to improve our performance and help kids.
Thank you. That was a great analogy. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So there's a question in the chat. And so, you know, I know from our center's perspective, we're always bragging about you guys because we see so many indicators of excellence, including state assessment scores, where all of your students and each demographic group of your students is outperforming the state. But the question is, so how much emphasis, how much focus do you place on test scores? Is it just about the tests? Is the pressure just about getting better and better test scores?
It's not just about the test, but you would be doing your students a disservice if you didn't care about the test scores. It's how you're judged as a school. It's the number one thing. There's some others now, like in California, we've got a matrix of things, but none of it compares to test scores. And if you believe there's any validity in the test scores reflecting academic knowledge, then you should not be okay with low test scores. They're not the only thing, but absolutely they matter. And how you arrange yourself should be to at least get decent test scores. Absolutely.
When it comes to testing, we don't test prep at all. The word doesn't even come up in our building. We ensure that the curriculum throughout the entire year is rigorous, and it does reflect questions that you would see on a state test. So it's constant and ongoing, and we start exposing them to that as early as pre-K, so that when they do encounter the state exams, they do not feel like this is something brand new and they've never seen this structure before. But we don't emphasize testing in our school community at all. As an admin team, of course I do. That's like behind the scenes. When I say we don't reinforce it, I don't impose it on my kids. Like I don't put that pressure on the kids and on the teachers. I just have that pressure on myself.
Yeah, I get it. We want to put our best foot forward in whatever we do. And if that's a test, great. If it's a pep rally, great. You know, I mean, that's something that is in our mindset as a school. I mean, sure. I mean, sometimes you got to look at the scoreboard and say, we're doing good. and what is the scoreboard? You got to decide what is valuable in your school. As a high school, your ACT scores and SAT, those are important because those impact kids' finances and their future options. So we do value those. And we know that, 2 points higher in the ACT might mean $20,000 less in your tuition. And so if we know that and don't do anything about it, we're kind of negligent. So what we try to do is make sure that we put it in its proper place. Test scores are only a problem when they're not good, or they're not, so we don't want to go there. And we don't want to, because that's going to take our other efforts away. We're going to be forced on that. So let's make sure our curriculum's tight. Let's make, like Alexa said, and make sure that, what we're doing matters to kids. And again, we're all about what's a sincere effort, and are you giving that? That's what your job is here. That's my job every day. And that's what model work is about. And if you're not doing it, we need to have a conversation. Bring your best.
So I totally agree with Kevin. What we learned in life, everything's about a balance. I believe that core, that instruction is the number one thing in getting our students to be problem solvers, critical thinkers, and just being successful human beings, right? We need great citizens and we need great role models that we can look up to. But the other part of it is, we have to level the playing field. Our students are at a disadvantage. In order for my students to get to a great high school, they have to have great scores, or even to be considered to get into, they have to take something called a specialized high school to be accepted to the elite high schools in New York City. So in one way or another, we have to prepare our students. And think about it, any job that you have to take, whether you become a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, you still have to take a test. I'm not saying you're teaching to the test, but I think it behooves us if we don't have a balance of both of those aspects.
So speaking about balance, could each of you share a little bit about how your school is bringing balance to your kids? There's this myth out there that in order to serve African-American students well, we need to have 3 courses of math and 4 courses of English and drill. But I don't see that at any of your schools. So talk to us about the richness of what you offer your students in terms of other curricula or extracurricular activities. Dr. Grauer, help me out here.
Yes, sir. Well, I think it's the perspective we promote. Like I mentioned earlier, we take our work seriously, but ourselves lightly. And we do offer time and Brian mentioned some of the cool things he's doing, for play and silliness. And you're never too old for that stuff. We still have a field day. We still do silly pep rallies. I have DJs in the hall. If our students have talent, they perform in between classes. You've seen that, Dr. Johnson.
Yes.
And that's something that we do and kids look forward to doing. There's a lot of talented kids out there that they can do lots of things, whether they can rap, sing, or dance. There's a platform, for them to do that here. And we know that kids aren't evil if they're not into your content. They're not bad people. They're just not into your social studies unit. So we ask the adults to be more resilient than their most indifferent student. And the fact that you might have a child that's displaying some disinterest, but they're interested in something. And part of our job as a school to find out what that is. And it's a little bit more difficult in the pandemic. I mean, we've only been in person for 1 month. We've been virtual the entire time until January 25th. So and we're much tighter with our rules and regulations than we normally are. However, getting to know people and finding something. If someone has an idea, hey, I want a club for board games, let's start it. You don't need a lot of formalities and rules. If you have ideas and kids want to do them, then let's do that. I think it's being open to that, hearing student voice. A student told me the other day, why isn't there a bookshelf in the bathroom to put our stuff? And we go in there, oh, okay, we'll put them, that's easy. Something simple like that. I think it pays dividends.
We have, I'm sorry.
Please.
At our school, we provide visual arts, music, and coding classes. So in addition to their core subjects, they have that, and students are departmentalized in grades 2 to 5. So they do switch classes, and what we've noticed, it does allow the teacher to engage in a lot more hands-on activity, especially in science. They're able to really spend a lot of time unpacking phenomenons and creating projects, because the entire room is dedicated to that subject area. So we don't believe in just sitting down and being compliant at all.
Nice, nice. So there's a comment in the chat where they're clapping, and the response is, wow, to everything you all are saying and stand for. I feel like we're in church this morning. Thank you for sharing your gifts. So there you go.
Praise God.
There's a couple of comments in here about low expectations. One, it's saying, so how do you know if you're lowering your expectations versus just meeting students where they are? Another that's saying, what do you see as the first steps in getting staff to stop lowering expectations for target groups of students? Comments?
Are they referring to I'm not sure if the question is in relation to the curriculum.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a fair assumption that that's what people are talking about.
So at Concourse Village, I co-create the curriculum, and all the resources are pre-approved by me. Okay, so deviation doesn't really happen. I would need data to see why we're making any shifts, and the shifts are just to create accessibility. So if you're telling me that we need to have a differentiated text because the child is reading at this level, I don't just want it at his level, I want it at least 2 above his or her level, because we still need to push. So in terms of curriculum, it's very heavily monitored. So I don't have those experiences.
I think at the high school for us, we're preparing every student to get accepted to and be successful in a 4-year university. And that means every student, not just the cream of the crop. So we work backwards from college. And if you think about in college, how you get your grades, how are you successful? Because you perform the assessments, the papers that they're assessing what you know. And so we go, in that sense, college is basically 100% assessment. You don't get points for showing up. You don't get points for homework. So we walk that backwards. So and we started actually in 6th grade because we're at K-12. And it starts with, by the time they get to freshman year, it's 80% of their grade comes from assessment. And when they're a senior, it's 95% of their grade. So done are the tons of points for just being a compliant student. That's great. And that's part of the problem, I think, with our grading systems, is that you often get points for being compliant, which is wonderful. And you get to move on to the next grade, but you don't know very much. And so we do that, and that takes care of a lot of it. And so I think making sure that your kids are being graded on the mastery of content over just showing up and smiling and being nice and not causing a problem. I think that's part of the answer.
Very nice.
And I think, just as a simple statement, it's important that we all have standards, right? And we see these standards as the end goal. In my school, it's a starting point. It's not the end goal that we want to achieve, those standards for each particular grade. And just as Alexa, we also have coaches, and we know programs don't work for all kids. So we have to develop our own thematic units of study that impact our kids and that are relevant to our kids. So with their identities represented. And that's the key piece that we are always looking at and building and refining.
Great. Thank you so much. You know, I'm afraid that we are just about out of time. And I apologize to the audience because I've only been able to ask a fraction of your questions. I will say to you that as was mentioned early on in the session, Dr. Monroe and I are working on a book that will address so many of these issues, and the book will feature these 4 schools and another school, Winbrook Elementary in Florida. And that book, the tentative title is When Black Students Excel. It's not out yet. We are behind where we would like to be, in part because of the pandemic, but we anticipate that it will be out before the end of this calendar year. And when it does come out, NCUST will be sharing lots of information about that book, and that might be an opportunity for you to get more of your questions answered. I want to just very quickly give our panelists an opportunity to answer this question. What's your most important suggestion for principals who serve communities like yours, who hope to achieve results like you have achieved at your school? Just a very short answer, please. What's your one piece of advice for principals?
It's like my friend was telling me, it's like when you meet someone who's lost a lot of weight and you say, "What's your secret?" And everyone wants it to be a fat pill, right? You take the pill and it all goes away. I would like that actually myself, but the one thing I would say is, I believe the most important thing to a child's education is the quality of instruction in the classroom. Therefore, the quality of the instructor is going to be the most important thing. So for me, I am going to put all of my time and I think that really good teachers. You need to think creative. If you're not getting enough good candidates the way you're doing things, you've got to do things different. And I think that I will do everything it takes, spend the hours. And I think Principal Sorden was saying this too, like you go through all the links. I have my kids, the demo lessons. I ask the kids, what do you think about that candidate? Spend all your time creating a robust hiring process to get the kind of teachers that are going to be a good fit for you and be good instructors for your kids. So I guess
Thank you.
that would be
Principal Rainey. Principal Sorten.
I would add that you are the role model. So when you're walking into that building, look at your scholars with a mentality that they have a funds of knowledge. Never ever talk about anything in a deficit. Anything that whatever subgroup, whatever living condition, that's just information. It doesn't mean anything other than you know some information, but it doesn't speak to their ability. So always move with a mindset that they can achieve more than what we could imagine.
Thank you. Dr. Grauer, one piece of advice for your colleagues around the country?
Yeah, I'll echo the sentiments. Again, we can't really afford a negative thought in this role. We have to be on the offensive, but I think we also got to be aware of our motives. Our motives will enhance our mastery of whatever we're doing. And when we're passionate about something, we have a chance to be really good at it. So you have to include that in what you're doing. And if you root out some motives in yourself as a leader that aren't pure or going the right direction, we have to have the courage to be able to root them out, because we can't expect others to do it if we don't do it. So yeah, analyze your motives, listen to what other people say, be coachable.
Excellent. Thank you. And Principal Pantelides.
I'm going to have to start off with my famous quote that I really love from Nietzsche. Give me a why and I can bear with any how. I think it's so important that we keep everything relevant, informative, meaningful, purposeful to our kids, building those relationships, making meaning. And the third part is including that rigor. So this way your core is second to none.
Great, wonderful answers. Thank you so much. What an amazing panel. Thank you so much to Dr. Grauer, Principal Rainey, Principal Sorton, Principal Pantelides. It's clear to us why your students are succeeding in so many ways. Thanks for all you're doing for your students, your communities, and for all of us who hope to learn from and emulate your successes. And thanks to you, Dr. Monroe, for joining us in your new role in the Fresno Unified School District. We wish you great success. And finally, thanks to our wonderful